Let me tell you a story that will touch your heart. You know those moments that change everything? That make you rethink the meaning of things? It was on an ordinary Tuesday in Long Beach. The sky was heavy, that gray that threatens rain but doesn't deliver, you know what I mean? I had just left the studio after a recording session that lasted all night. My eyes were burning with fatigue, but my mind was still buzzing with the beats we had created. Have you ever wondered how a simple detour can completely change your life? How a small detail, seemingly insignificant, can trigger a series of events that touch your soul in a way you never imagined. I decided to pass through Bixby Park to stretch my legs before heading home. The fresh morning air carried that damp aroma of wet grass mixed with the distant smell of the ocean. The trees swayed gently with the breeze, creating that natural symphony that always calms me. That's when I heard it, a weak sound, almost imperceptible among the noises of the city that was beginning to wake up. A whimper, painful, distressing. What is that? I thought to myself, feeling a shiver run up my spine. I followed the sound, moving away from the main path and entering a more wooded area of the park. The whimpering became clearer with each step I took. My heart began to race, as if it knew I was about to find something that would change my perspective forever. That's when I saw, partially hidden among the damp morning bushes, a small trembling body that made me freeze in place. A dog. No, a puppy. So small it would easily fit in the palm of my hand. His fur, which I imagined had once been golden, was tangled, dirty with mud and what looked like dried blood. Prominent ribs marked his skeletal body and open wounds, some still oozing, covered his skin. But it was his eyes that pierced my soul, large, amber, almost disproportionate to his thin little face, reflecting a terror so deep it made me forget to breathe. When our gazes met, something inside me shattered. A knot formed in my throat, a physical sensation of pain I hadn't felt since childhood. Those eyes, they carried a story of betrayal and suffering that no living being should know. For a moment, I saw in him the reflection of the eyes of so many young people I had known on the streets of Long Beach, that look of someone who no longer expects anything good from the world. "Hey, little homie," I whispered, my voice hoarser than usual, as I bent down with deliberate slowness. My joints protested against the movement, but I ignored the pain. "It's all right, man. Snoop's here now. Nobody's gonna hurt you." Snoop's word. The smell emanating from him was a mixture of infection, urine, and fear, an odor that turned my stomach, not from disgust, but from anger toward whoever had allowed this. The puppy tried to shrink even more, his tiny limbs trembling so violently I thought he might hurt himself. A high-pitched whimper, almost inaudible, escaped from his throat, cutting through my heart like a razor. That's when I noticed, with a horror that made me physically sick, circular burn marks on his fur, some still with recent scabs. Cigarette butts. Someone had deliberately put out cigarettes on him. My vision turned red for a moment as a primitive rage grew inside me, a fury I hadn't felt since my darkest days. I took a deep breath, controlling myself. Who would do this? What kind of demon in human form would be capable of inflicting so much pain on such an innocent and defenseless being? "I'm going to find who did this to you," I promised quietly, more to myself than to him. I sat completely on the ground, ignoring the damp earth that stained my designer pants. I crossed my legs Indian style, trying to appear smaller, less threatening. The morning breeze carried the smell of eucalyptus mixed with the metallic odor of imminent rain. I maintained distance, just existing in the same space as him, breathing slowly and deeply as in meditation. "You know, little dude, I understand that fear." I began to speak, my voice a constant murmur like a lullaby. "I know well that feeling of not trusting anyone, of thinking everyone just wants to hurt you. I lived like that for a long time." As I spoke, I observed his tiny reactions, a different tremor, an ear that moved slightly in my direction. Slowly, I opened my backpack and took out the sandwich I had bought on my way to the studio. The smell of bacon spread through the air, and I noticed how his nostrils dilated slightly. "You like that, huh? It's from Johnny's Deli." Best sandwich in town for real. With careful fingers, I undid a small piece, removing any seasoning that might be too strong for his debilitated stomach. I placed the piece on the ground and gently pushed it in his direction, keeping my hand as far away as possible. "Take it easy, little warrior," I continued, my voice choked with emotion. "This is just between us. No one's going to hurt you anymore, at least not while I'm around, and I plan to stick around for a long time." I felt a raindrop fall on my hand, then another. The sky began to cry what my pride wouldn't allow. I continued talking, telling stories of my childhood, the struggles, the losses, the victories. It didn't matter what I said, just the constant, soft sound of my voice. We stayed like this for almost an hour. The light rain stopped and returned several times, but I didn't move. My body protested against the position, but I ignored it. Time seemed to have lost meaning. There was only me, the puppy, and that moment suspended between the horror of his past and whatever future we might create. Gradually, so slowly that it seemed like an eternity, hunger began to overcome fear. He moved an inch forward, then retreated, tried again. A tiny step, another, always keeping those huge eyes fixed on me, muscles tense, ready to flee at the slightest sign of danger. Each movement clearly caused pain, but hunger was stronger. "That's right, little homie. At your own pace. Snoop will wait as long as it takes." When he finally reached the piece of sandwich, he smelled it at length before taking it with surprising gentleness, as if fearing it was a trick. He swallowed, almost without chewing, and for the first time, I noticed a different gleam in his eyes. Not just fear, but a tiny spark of something that could, one day, transform into hope. That's when he tried to take another step toward me, probably hoping for more food, and collapsed with a sharp yelp that reverberated in my bones. Only then did I notice, horrified, that his right hind leg was at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, possibly in multiple places. A deep disgust invaded me again, not for the dog, but for the humanity that allowed such suffering. Tears began to blur my vision. Me, Snoop Dogg, crying in a public park because of a stray dog? If someone had told me this yesterday, I would have laughed. But there I was, with my heart broken for that little being who, despite all the suffering, was still fighting to survive. "You know what?" I said to the puppy who now watched me with less fear. "I'm going to call you Survivor. Because that's what you are, man. A survivor." With great care and patience, I managed to get close enough to pick Survivor up in my arms. He weighed almost nothing, was practically skin and bone. I felt his rapid breathing against my chest as I carried him to the car. "I need to take you to a doctor, little homie. Everything's going to be fine, I promise." On the way to the nearest veterinary clinic, I couldn't stop thinking about how someone could abandon or, worse, deliberately mistreat a defenseless animal. Anger boiled inside me, mixed with a growing determination. This couldn't continue happening. Not in my neighborhood. Not anywhere. Dr. Martinez, the on-duty veterinarian, examined Survivor with an increasingly grave expression. Broken bones, cigarette burns, severe malnutrition, infections, the list seemed endless. At one point, our eyes met, and I saw in him the same indignation I felt. "Will he survive, doctor?" My voice came out hoarser and more vulnerable than I expected. "We'll do everything in our power, Mr. Broadus. But I should be honest, his condition is critical. He'll need immediate surgery and a long recovery period. Do whatever is necessary. Cost is not an issue." While Survivor was being prepared for surgery, I sat in the waiting room, unable to leave. I called my manager, canceling all appointments for the day. This was more important. It had to be. During those hours of waiting, my mind wandered to my own story. Growing up on the streets of Long Beach wasn't easy. Violence, drugs, gangs. I saw and lived things that no young person should experience. In a way, I too was a survivor. Perhaps that's what connected me so deeply to that little dog. I recognized in him a fight for survival that I knew all too well. What if I had chosen another path that day? What if I had gone straight home after the studio, Survivor probably wouldn't have survived another day in those conditions. Sometimes fate places us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't know we need to be there. After 4 agonizing hours, Dr. Martinez finally came out of the operating room, still wearing his surgical mask. I stood up immediately, trying to read his expression. "He's a fighter," said the doctor, removing his mask. "We managed to stabilize him and fix the broken leg. The next 48 hours will be critical, but if he can get through them, the chances are good." I released the breath I didn't even realize I was holding. "Can I see him?" The doctor led me to a small room where Survivor was lying on a heated bed, connected to various monitors and IVs. He looked even smaller and more fragile like this, with half his body bandaged. I sat beside him, observing the gentle movement of his chest, proof that he was still fighting. "You can do it, little homie," I whispered. "You're stronger than you think." It was at that moment that I made a decision that would change not only the life of that dog, but mine as well. Survivor would not just be another successful rescue case. He would be the beginning of something bigger. I spent the entire night at the clinic, refusing to leave Survivor alone. By morning, when he finally opened his eyes, something amazing happened. Instead of the fear I had seen the day before, there was a spark of recognition, and when I extended my hand and he licked my fingers, weakly but voluntarily, I felt a connection that transcended words. "Let's go home, Survivor," I said when 3 days later, the veterinarian finally discharged him. "Your new life begins now." Adapting my mansion to receive Survivor was easier than I imagined. What was really challenging was gaining his complete trust. Every loud noise made him cower. Every sudden movement provoked a whimper of fear. I needed to learn to be gentler, more patient, more attentive. I spent weeks sleeping on the floor beside him, so he wouldn't feel alone during the night. Each small victory, eating without fear, sleeping deeply, playing timidly, was celebrated as a great triumph. And they truly were. My friends mocked me at first. Snoop Dogg, the gangsta rapper, transformed into a dog sitter? But when they came to visit and saw Survivor's transformation, and honestly my own transformation, the jokes gave way to respect. "You did a good thing, Snoop," my old friend Dr. Dre said after meeting Survivor. "This dog chose you as much as you chose him." As Survivor recovered physically, I began to notice how his true personality emerged. He was playful, intelligent, and incredibly loyal. Each morning he greeted me with renewed enthusiasm, as if each day together was a precious gift. And it was, but something still bothered me. I constantly thought about how many other survivors were out there, suffering, waiting for someone who would never come. The idea kept me awake at night, even when Survivor was already sleeping peacefully by my side. One day, while we were walking through the same park where we met, Survivor could now walk without limping, although he was still slower. I had an epiphany. I stopped in the middle of the path, looking at my little friend who was now happily sniffing the flowers. "Survivor," I called, and he immediately looked at me, ears up, eyes bright. "I think we've found our mission, Manitoba." The following week, I began to mobilize my resources and contacts. I bought an abandoned property on the outskirts of Long Beach and hired architects to design what would be the largest and most complete animal rescue and rehabilitation center in California. I wanted to be a place of healing, I explained to the designers. Not just a shelter, but a true sanctuary. My lawyers created the Survivor Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to the rescue, rehabilitation, and responsible adoption of mistreated animals. I invested millions from my own pocket, but also organized charity events that attracted other artists and celebrities. The impact was greater than I could have imagined. What began as a personal story between me and an abandoned dog transformed into a movement. Schools began to contact us to talk about empathy and animal care. Former inmates found purpose and redemption working as volunteers at the sanctuary. Entire families united around the cause. While all this was happening, Survivor was always by my side, the perfect ambassador for the foundation. His story touched hearts in a way that words never could. When people saw his transformation from a broken and frightened animal to a happy and confident companion, they immediately understood what we were trying to do. You know what's craziest, Survivor? I said one night, as we were sitting on our porch watching the sunset, I thought I was saving you. But actually, you were the one who saved me. And it was true. Before Survivor, I was stuck in a routine, accumulating wealth and fame without really thinking about the greater purpose of it all. He taught me about vulnerability, about new beginnings, about the transformative power of unconditional love. Today, 5 years after that encounter in the park, the Survivor Sanctuary has already saved more than 10,000 animals. We've implemented educational programs in schools, offered free veterinary assistance to low-income families, and worked with legislators to toughen laws against animal abuse. But amid all this success, the moments I value most are still those quiet ones when Survivor rests his head on my lap and we simply exist together. Two souls who found each other when they needed each other most. What do you think would have happened if we hadn't met that day? I sometimes ask him as if he could answer. But deep down, I think we both know. Some encounters are so deeply transformative that they seem written in the stars long before they happen. It's easy to go through life with eyes blindfolded to the suffering around us. It's comfortable to pretend it's not our problem. But when you truly open your eyes, when you allow your heart to be touched by the pain of another being, you discover a purpose that transcends any fame or wealth. So, if you're wondering if it's worth caring, if it's worth risking having your heart broken for someone you barely know, be it human or animal, let me tell you, it's worth every second. Because in the end, it's not the songs I've recorded or the awards I've won that define my life. It's the love I gave to a small abandoned dog and the movement that was born from that love. And if you're passing through your own park today, perhaps there's a survivor waiting for you too. Someone or something that will change your life in ways you could never imagine. All you need to do is listen to that distant whimper, follow the sound, and have the courage to extend your hand. As I always say now at each show before saying goodbye, spread love like a dog spreads joy, unconditionally. And that, my friends, is the true story behind what the media called the rescue that shocked the world. It wasn't the rescue that was extraordinary. It was what happened afterward. It's always what happens afterward that defines who we truly are. Peace out. Snoop and Survivor, transforming the world one animal at a time.